Hello guys, and welcome back to another tutorial at Essosafashion. In this video, I'm going to show you how to draft a basic dress block with butt shaping, and also show you guys how to take the side bust darts. If that's something you're interested in, then please keep on watching. I have my pattern paper here already divided into two. One side will be for the front and the other will be for the back pattern. I'm going to be drafting the both of them simultaneously. The measurement you're going to need for this tutorial is the shoulder measurement, the bust point measurement, the bust span, the bust roundness, the half length, the waist roundness, the hip line, the hip roundness, your above knee points, and your full dress length. Other measurements needed will be the armhole measurements. That if you prefer to take the armhole roundness, you are going to need that as well. Okay, then for the half length, you are going to need to measure your front half length and also measure the back half length. So please make sure you have all of your measurements ready, and let's just get right into it. So I'm going to start by taking the shoulder measurements here. This is going to be used for the front pattern. I'll mark my shoulder measurement here and also go ahead and do the same thing at the other side. I am starting from the edge of the paper inwards for both sides, and I'm going to be taking the measurements on both sides simultaneously so that we can do this quickly and it will also be easier to understand. After marking that, I'll go ahead and mark all of the vertical measurements, starting with the armhole. The armhole I'm working with is 7 inches, but I'm going to add 1 inch as the shoulder slant allowance. So whatever armhole you're working with, just go ahead and add 1 inch to it. Then I'll mark the bust points. The bust points I'm working with is 10.5. After that, I'm going to mark the under bust point, although the under bust point measurement is not really needed, but I just marked it out. Then I marked the half length. The half length is 17. Next thing I'm going to mark is the hip points. The hip point I'm working with is 27 inches. Then I went ahead to mark the above knee point, which is 38, and the full dress length, which is 48. So all of these measurements, you have to make sure that you have them already before you can draft this pattern. You're going to use almost all of your body measurements for this. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same thing at this middle line, starting with the armhole, which is 8. Remember, this is plus shoulder slant, the bust point, which is 10.5, the under bust point, which is 14. So now in this middle line, I'm going to mark the front half length, but I will also mark the back half length. The back half length is 15.5. So I mark the front and the back half length here because this is the line that connects the two sides. Then I will go ahead and also mark the hip line, which is 27. Then I will also mark the above knee point, which is 38, and the full dress length, which is 48. So this is a calf length dress. That's why the full dress length is 10 inches longer from the above knee points. So I'm also repeating the same measurements at the other edge of the paper so that I can rule the horizontal lines. So guys, after taking all of the measurements, I'll use my ruler to connect all of the points. Because I took the measurements at the both edge of the paper and also at the midpoint line, I'm able to achieve a very straight line when I'm marking all of this out. So it's important that you don't just take the measurements on one side, rather take it on the two edge that you are going to connect together. So this is the armhole line, also known as the chest line. This is the bust point line for both the front and the back. This is the under bust line for the front. This is the front half length line, and this is the back half length line. So I'm just going to mark the hip line across. I'm going to mark the one for the front first because I'm going to use a pencil to mark the other side. My reason for doing that is because I'm going to make adjustments to the hip line the above knee point and the full dress length for the back, so I don't want to use a permanent marker to do that. So as you guys can see, I've gone ahead to mark it out using a pencil. The 1/2 inch at the dress length is the hemming allowance, so I used 1/2 inch for that. The next thing that I'm going to do is mark out the armhole line, and to do this I just took the shoulder measurements again at the chest line so that I can get a straight line. So I connected from that to meet with the shoulder line, which is the top edge of the paper. The next thing I'm going to do is take out the neck measurement. The standard neck measurement for the front is 3 by 3, nothing less, except if you want the neck to not fit. It's going to be very tight if you use anything less than 3 by 3. So after marking that out, I'm going to use a straight ruler to connect the 2 points so that it will be easier to draw out the curve. So I'll place the curve ruler this way, making sure that it's not too sharp, and then I'll just draw out the neckline. After doing that, I'll move on to the back. The standard back neck measurement is 3 by 1, so 1 inch this way and 3 inch this way. Just like I did for the front, I'll first of all use a straight ruler to connect the 2 points, then I'll draw out a curve at the side. I'm going to use my hand to draw out the curve for this side because I noticed that when I try to use a French curve for this, the neckline doesn't come out right. So I prefer to use my hands to trace out the neckline. The next thing I'm going to do is take out the shoulder slant. Remember, 1 inch was added to the armhole measurement. So for the back, I'm going to take that exact 1 inch as the shoulder slant. But for the front, what I'm going to mark is 1.5. I know the allowance made was 1 inch, not 1.5 inch. My reason for doing this is to make sure that the armhole for the front is fitted more and there's no bulge in the midpoints. This is actually optional. If you're okay with using just 1 inch as a slant, then go ahead and use that. But if you want it to have a better and more tight fitting, then you take an extra 1/2 inch of the shoulder slant for the front. And note that this 1/2 inch that is taken off will not be replaced, so it's just going to be cut off from the armhole. After doing that, the next thing I want to do is mark out the bust span. The bust span is also known as the nipple to nipple measurement, and the measurements I am working with is 7 inches. 7 divided by 2 will give me 3.5. So I'm going to come to the edge of the paper here and mark 3.5. For the front, this starts from the bust point and ends at the hip line. While for the back, it starts from the chest line and also ends at the hip line. The bust span always stops at the hip line. It can't extend past the hip line, okay? So just like I did for the front, I'll connect the 2 points together with a straight line. After doing that, the next thing to do is to make adjustments to the back pattern. Remember that the front half length is longer than the back half length by 1.5 inch. So to make sure that everything match, I'm going to come to the hip line and I'll mark 1.5 inch above the hip line. So this 1.5 inch is the difference between the front half length and the back half length. If yours is 2 inch or 2.5, that's what you will mark. I just mark this on both sides and use a straight ruler to connect. So I'm using a permanent marker because that is the actual line I'm going to be working with. The other line that I used pencil to draw will be erased. Then I'll come to the above knee points and also mark 1.5 inch on both sides and use a straight ruler to connect. So my reason for doing this is to make sure that the sides for both the front and the back match when I'm done sewing. The reason for the difference between the front half length and the back half length is the bust curve. So obviously the back is flat, so the back will automatically be shorter than the front. So we have to make adjustments for that to give it a better fitting. If you do not take that into consideration, you notice that the back will be bulging out. So this is one of the reasons for that. I'm going to come to the hem of the dress and also repeat the same thing. mark 1.5 inch above the hem of the dress or the dress length, and just mark out the line. So I'm going to go ahead and erase all of this line so that it doesn't confuse you guys. Now that all of that have been done, the next thing to do is to take the body measurements. That's the round measurement, the bust roundness, the waist roundness, the hip roundness. All of that has to be taken out now. So I'm going to start with the bust roundness. The bust roundness I'm working with is 37. 37 divided by 4 is 9.25. So I marked that. Then I marked the waist roundness as well. The waist I'm working with is 27. 27 divided by 4 is 7. But I am adding 1.5 inch to the waist roundness as that allowance. And then I also marked the hip roundness. The hip roundness I'm working with is 42. 42 divided by 4 is 10.5. So whatever I have at the hip is what I'll take at the above knee point, and at the full dress length I'm going to make adjustments to that later, but for now that's what I'm going to do. So after I marked everything, I went ahead to use a ruler to connect all of the points. Whatever I take at the bust is what I'm also going to take at the chest line. So if the bust is 9.2, the chest line will also be 9.2, meaning that the line from the bust point, from the chest line to the bust point line, will be straight. So as you guys can see, as I'm marking all of this out, the pattern is starting to take its form. This is already looking like a dress. So after marking out the one for the front, I'll move on to the back pattern and repeat the same thing. At the chest line, I'll take the bust measurements, and at the bust point line, I will also take the bust measurements. Remember, I said whatever the bust measurements is what will also be marked at the chest line. Then I will come to the waist and mark the waist measurement of 7 plus 1.5 inch as the dart allowance. I'll come to the hip line, mark the hip measurement of 10.5, and whatever I have at the hips is what I'm going to take at the above knee line and at the full dress length. Remember that this is the new line I'm working with, not the one I initially drew. So don't be confused when you see that the lines are not equal on both sides. One is higher than the other. We're also going to make adjustments to the front pattern to make sure that both sides match. So after I've marked out the roundness, I'm going to connect all of the points from the chest line to the bust point line, from the bust point line to the half length line, from the half length to the hip line, and from the hip line to the above knee point, and from the above knee point to the full dress length. So guys, at this point the pattern is halfway through, but we're not done yet because we still have to shape in the dress, do the butt contour, take in the side darts and all of that. So guys, now that the dress has been formed, the next thing I'm going to do is take out the armhole measurement. For the front, I'm going to come up by 3 inch, and from that 3 inch point I will go in by half of an inch. However, for the back, I'm going to divide whatever I have into 2 and mark it out. So obviously 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, so I marked that, and then I came in by half of an inch as well. So to draw out the curve, you're going to first of all use a straight ruler. So connect from that half inch mark back into the shoulder line for the both sides. Then after doing that, you're going to grab your armhole curve, your French curve, your master curve, basically any curve ruler, and connect from that half inch point to the chest line. So make sure that this doesn't extend past the measurement. So you're going to stop at where the measurement stops and connect these 2 points together from here to here. Then I'll do the same thing for the back. After that, the next thing to do is taking the darts for the front and for the back. Remember, it was 1.5 inch dart allowance I added. So that 1.5 inch, I'm going to divide it into 2, which is 0.75 inch. To take this out, I'll come to the waist line, that's the half length line, and mark 0.75 inch on both sides of the bust span line. So this is the importance of the bust span line. It helps to take in the dart. Then I'll come to the back as well, come to the half length line and mark 0.75 inch on both sides. So I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect this. For the front, before I connect, I'm going to come down from the bust point by 1 inch and then connect the dart. The reason for doing this is to give the dress a better fitting. I don't usually like when the dart stops directly at the bust point. I prefer for it to be 1 inch below. And then from the half length line, I'll connect straight into the hip line this way. However, for the back, I will not be coming down by 1 inch. I'm going to connect this straight from the half length to the chest line and also from the half length to the hip line. It's this new line I'll be connecting it to. Don't make the mistake of using the old line that was wiped off. After doing that, the next thing to do is to take the side dart at the front. So the side dart is taking off the difference between the front half length and the back half length. So I'll come to the bust point line and mark 1.5 inch below it. This is representing the difference between the front and the back half length. So ideally it's to be connected straight into the bust point, but I prefer to come out from the bust point by 1.5 inch first before taking out the side dart. So this is going to look better when you're making a dress, especially a corporate dress. You don't want all of the darts meeting at the exact bust point line. So I just connected that and then divided it into 2 so that I can take in the dart this way. However, I'm not going to be doing this yet until I actually want to make the dress. So I'll just illustrating it for you guys to see. After the side bust dart has been taken out, you will see that both sides of the dress is going to match. So if I take the measurements for this front, skipping the side dart, and I just take the entire measurement on the side, and I also measure the one for the back, you see that it aligns properly. So this is how to adjust for the difference between the front half length and the back half length. The measurement I got for the front is 39, and as you can see, the back is also 39 inches long. Don't worry, this doesn't affect the length of the dress in any way. So now that all of that has been done, the next thing to do is to shape in this dress. If you want to have a straight dress without any fitting, just fitted at the hips, then you don't need to shape in anything. But I want mine to be a pencil gown. So I'm going to come to the above knee point and mark 2 inches and connect from these 2 inches back to the hip line. So the amount you take off from the above knee point depends on how much or how fitted you want it to be. So I'll move on to the hem of the dress and also mark 2 inches plus an extra half of an inch to make the dress more fitted at the hem, and I'll also connect this. At the hem of the dress, I'm going to come out by an extra 0.25 inch. This is to make it easier to hem the dress, because you notice that if you don't do this, when you want to hem it, the hem of the dress, when you fold it in, it won't be wide enough to use, and you'll end up having to stretch it out to make it fit, or it won't even fit at all. So to prevent this, you're going to add 0.25 inch to the hem. The next thing I'm going to do is make adjustments to the center back of this pattern. This is to make the dress fit right and prevent zip bulge, and this will also help to shapen the butt a little. So to do this, you're going to come to the half length here and mark half of an inch inwards. And after doing this, you're going to use a straight ruler to connect from this half an inch point straight into the shoulder line and also straight into the hip line. After doing that, you will need to replace what was taken off the waist. If not, the waist is going to be short by 1 inch. So I'm going to come to the side here and mark half of an inch and blend this back into the hip line and the bust point line. The next thing I want to do is shaping the butt area to give a nice butt contour when you put on a dress. So what I'm going to do is come to the above knee point at the center back, and I will mark 1 inch. After marking 1 inch, I will connect this straight into the hip line. After doing that, I'll come to the side and also mark 1 inch, meaning that I've taken off a total of 2 inches. So instead of taking off the entire 2 inch from the side, I shared it into 2. But if you want it to be more fitted, I recommend still taking off 2 inches from the side and 1 inch from the center back, because after I finished making the dress, I had to shape in the sides a bit more. So after I've done that, I also come to the hem of the dress and mark 1 inch at the center back and at the side and connect. And you guys, at this point, we're almost done. The next thing to do is to add bodice allowance. So this is to make it easy for you to sit down when you make a fitted dress, especially when the material is not stretchy. So it's important to add this, because notice that if you do not do this and you make a dress very fitted and pencil on your body, when you sit down you find it difficult, or you need to drag the dress up a bit before you can sit. But if you add the bodice allowance, it will be easy for you to sit down. So before I do this, I'm just going to slash this pattern into 2 so that I can focus on the back pattern. So I'm just switching up the front and the back pattern so that the back pattern will be closer to me. To be able to add the bodice allowance, what you're going to do is come to the center back, and then you come to the hip line and slash this open. But note that you won't be separating the pattern completely. You just stop right before the edge here. Then you're going to insert another piece of paper underneath the pattern and spread out the pattern. I recommend using 1 inch or 1.5 inch, maximum of 2 inches. And that 2 inch is if the person you're making the pattern for has a very, very big butt. Okay, but for a regular body type, just use 1 inch. And if you feel the need to, use 1.5 inch. So I've gone ahead to measure out that exact 1 inch mark that I want. To hold this down, I'll just use a masking tape to secure it. So this is the bodice allowance. Let me write it out for you guys to see. After I have secured this together, I'll just go ahead and connect these 2 points so that it will rhyme properly. The next thing I'm going to do is make a little bit of adjustments to the side dart here, so that when I take in the dart, one side will not be shorter than the other. So to do this, I'm going to measure this first dart, and what I have is 4.25, while the other one is 4 inches. Let me just take it again for you guys to see. So there's a difference of 0.25 inch, which I'm going to replace at the top. Then I'll use a straight ruler to connect from that 0.25 inch mark that was added to the line in between the darts. So to complete this, I'm going to have to connect from the 0.25 inch mark also straight into the chest line. At this point, the dress pattern is ready. What I'm going to do is cut off the excess pattern paper to reveal the actual dress pattern. So guys, this is the pattern here. By the time I take in the side darts for the fronts, both sides will match. When you want to cut on your fabric, just make sure that you add seam allowance all round. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more tutorials like this one, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.